These are 10 Soviet off-road trucks, so extreme, so far beyond anything a standard engineer would build, that most of the world never even heard their names. No roads required, no limits respected, and in some cases, no wheels at all. Soviet engineers during the Cold War faced a problem that no Western manufacturer wanted to touch. Russia is enormous, with much of it sitting under permanent ice, thick swamp, or snow so deep it swallows vehicles whole. The military needed equipment, the space program needed rescue teams, and scientists needed to reach places that did not appear on any map. So the engineers built machines that ignored all of it, each one stranger and more capable than the last. Every single truck on this list solved a real problem in the most extreme way imaginable, and the results still look almost impossible today. Starting at number 10, the Ural 4320 holds the title of the most dependable six-wheel drive army truck the Soviet Union ever produced. Introduced in 1977, it became the standard workhorse across the entire Soviet military, and what made it highly effective was the total absence of complexity. The diesel engine ran on the simplest possible design, which meant soldiers in the field could repair it with basic tools and no specialist knowledge. It crossed rivers up to 5 feet deep without stopping, pushed through dense forests, and climbed terrain that would stop most other trucks in minutes. Armies across dozens of countries still operate these machines today, which shows exactly how well the original engineering held up across nearly 50 years. Coming in at number 9, the Kraz 255, nicknamed Laptezhnik, earned its reputation starting in 1967 across the mud fields and frozen construction zones of the Soviet North. The nickname translates roughly to someone wearing old traditional woven shoes, and the comparison makes perfect sense once you see those wide-profile tires in person. The cab construction actually included sections of real wood framed under metal paneling, a detail that sounds primitive until you understand it kept the interior warmer and the overall weight lower. Those wide, low-pressure tires distributed the truck's weight across a large footprint, letting it float across deep mud that swallowed competitors whole. Armies and construction crews alike relied on it for decades because those tires solved a problem no narrow-wheeled truck ever could. At number 8, the GAZ-66, called Shishiga by the soldiers who drove it, did something that almost no truck its size had ever attempted before its 1964 introduction. Soviet paratroopers needed a truck they could drop from military aircraft, and engineers delivered exactly that by designing parachute systems large enough to lower the entire vehicle safely to the ground. The driver's position sat directly above the front wheels, with the engine housed centrally between the seats, which flattened the whole front profile and made the airdrop geometry possible. Once on the ground, the automatic, self-locking differentials meant the Shishiga almost never dug itself into a hole it could not escape. Tough, straightforward, and compact enough to fit inside a cargo aircraft, it served Soviet airborne forces for generations without a single major redesign. Number 7 takes things to an entirely different scale. The Kharkovchanka, built in 1958, traveled thousands of miles across Antarctica on tank tracks, carrying a full crew in relative comfort through temperatures cold enough to freeze steel solid. Engineers sealed the body completely against the Antarctic environment and fitted the interior with sleeping quarters, a kitchen, and a radio room. Soviet polar expeditions used it to cross terrain that no wheeled vehicle had ever crossed before, reaching parts of the South Pole interior that remained completely unexplored at the time. At a period when reaching those areas meant almost certain death in open air, this machine kept its crew alive and kept moving. At number 6, the MAZ-537 handled a job that most trucks would collapse under, carrying 50-ton battle tanks across the Soviet Union on an 8-wheel platform first introduced in the late 1950s. The engine driving all of that measured 38.8 liters of displacement across 12 cylinders, a figure that barely registers until you place it next to a standard 2-liter car engine. That power translated directly into a hauling capacity that kept Soviet armored divisions mobile without needing rail transport for every single movement. Decades after production ended, these trucks still appeared, pulling oversized industrial loads because the core engineering outlasted the Soviet Union itself by a wide margin. Number 5. The DT-30 Vityaz brought a completely different approach to cross-country movement when it entered service in the early 1980s. Weighing 58 tons fully loaded, it bent in the middle through an articulated joint, flexing over rocks and deep trenches the way a snake moves through uneven ground. That joint allowed the front and rear sections to travel at different angles simultaneously, which meant obstacles that would stop a rigid vehicle simply passed underneath while the cargo platform stayed level. A 12-cylinder engine producing 710 horsepower kept all that weight moving even at -50 degrees Celsius, and its 30-ton cargo rating made it the most useful heavy transport in the entire Soviet Arctic operation. At number 4, the ZIL-135 solved a very specific military problem in 1959 by mounting 2 separate engines and assigning each one to its own side of the truck. The left engine powered the left 4 wheels, and the right engine powered the right 4 wheels, with no mechanical connection between them. Turning happened through a conventional steering column that steered the front and rear axles in opposite directions, allowing this enormous vehicle to maneuver. The 8-wheel layout spread the truck's substantial weight evenly across soft ground, and the fiberglass cab protected the crew from rocket-launched shock waves. Soviet artillery units depended on this carrier to move and fire their heaviest weapons from completely unprepared terrain, and the twin-engine setup meant that if one side failed mechanically, the other side drove the truck home. Number 3 introduces the ZIL-E-167, a machine that looks like nothing any Western manufacturer seriously considered building in 1962. 2 V8 engines mounted in the rear drove 6 large fiberglass wheels, and the entire body cleared the ground by over 2 feet. Engineers at ZIL completed the working prototype in just 2 months, which, given the scale of the machine, bordered on reckless speed. The fuel tanks held 900 liters, or about 238 gallons, because at only 2.3 miles per gallon across deep Siberian snowfields, anything smaller would have left the crew stranded far beyond any resupply point. Gas industry officials needed access to the deepest parts of the Soviet North, but the project was canceled due to complexity, meaning this 6-wheeled giant never entered mass production. Number 2. The ZIL-4906 Bluebird existed for one specific purpose: keeping the Soviet space program running even when cosmonauts came down in the worst terrain on Earth. Built in the 1970s, this bright blue 6-wheel amphibious truck reached 50 miles per hour on roads, swam across rivers and lakes under its own power, and carried an onboard crane large enough to lift a full space capsule out of frozen swamp. The blue paint was not decoration. It made the truck visible to search aircraft flying over white snowfields from the air. Every element of the design served that singular mission, and that mission was bringing Soviet cosmonauts home alive from wherever their capsules happened to come down. At number 1, the ZIL-2906 stands as the most extraordinary piece of off-road engineering on this entire list, because it abandoned wheels and tracks completely. Built in 1975, it used 2 large rotating metal screws to propel itself through mud, snow, ice, and open water, spinning those helical drums against the ground to generate forward motion. Only 5 original units were ever produced, primarily assigned to space and aviation recovery operations deep in the Siberian wilderness. When a capsule came down in terrain too dense for the Bluebird to cross, the ZIL-2906 went in instead, pushing through conditions that destroyed every other vehicle concept engineers tested. Heated seats for the recovering cosmonauts completed the package. 5 machines, 1 mission, 0 wheels. and a solution so strange it still looks impossible even in archived documentary footage recorded during actual recovery operations. The Soviet Union built machines that the rest of the world simply never needed, because the rest of the world did not have to work in those conditions. Each of these trucks reflects something specific about the environment that created it. The vast frozen distances, the total absence of roads, the crushing weight of military hardware, and a space program that needed its people back regardless of where they landed. Drop your pick for the most striking machine in the comments and share this with someone who still thinks serious off-road capability stops at a lifted pickup truck.